Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast. This is the Wednesday early edition. This is the group that is going to tell you the cornerbacks that every team needs to draft. Peter from Scotland, Clint from the Southeast, and Durst, I'm going to say you're in the Southeast too. But anyways, Clint, how are things going in Atlanta Falcons land in the draft world for you?
Well, how are things going in Atlanta Falcons land? We're all pretty frustrated about the offensive production we've had and lack of consistency there, scoring game to game. A lot of finger pointing going on down here. We're all kind of, dealing with some Arnold Ebiketie trade rumors today, and then also Ray McLeod getting cut. So it's a little toxic, maybe, but I don't know when it's not got a little bit of radioactivity. So, same old, but it's definitely it's getting a little heated down here before, we face the second worst team in the league this weekend in Miami.
Yeah, and Peter, the Seahawks had a pretty convincing win on Monday night. How does that feel?
Yeah, it was good. Maybe not as convincing as it should have been, I think, seemed to be the general consensus. We've got an unfortunate habit, particularly for me watching here in the UK, of making games really close when they don't need to be. I could have quite happily left that one early, but instead we decided to let the Texans back into it and make it a nail-biter, which is just part of the course, same since the Pete Carroll era till now.
Yeah, and Durst, I know that you just follow football. What's going on in your world football-wise?
Well, I'll say this. I did the zero running back theory in my fantasy team, and I'm not one of those that play like 10 different fantasy teams. I got one. And so I would say that all my draft prep stuff has kind of helped me out because I do have Ja'Cory Crosby, or Bill now, Crosby Merritt on my team. I do have Scadaboo. I do have Junkins. And so, I pounded wide receiver early and got a bunch, and then I kind of hope for the best with some of these running backs, and that's kind of paying off for me this year.
Okay, well, we could talk about football for a while, but we are here to dive into some corners. This is going to be an interesting show because we're going to run the gamut of a couple guys we think should go back, and then there's going to be a couple of late day 3, and then we're going to be pushing maybe round 1 grades on maybe 1 or 2 players. But the players that we're covering, Ephesians Prysock from Washington, Judge Collier from South Carolina, Dante Balfour from Texas Tech, Jyaire Hill from Michigan, Elliott Washington from Penn State, Dalen Everett from Georgia, Davison Igbinosun from Ohio State, and then we'll close it out with Malik Muhammed from Texas. Clint, what did you see from Ephesians Prysock?
Well, you look at those two corners at Washington, Prysock and Takario Davis, and the length is just insane. I mean, they're both legit 6'4" guys. For further perspective for myself, like I'm 6'5", and the thought, other than I'm not a Division I athlete, the thought of going out and playing a position like cornerback just with this much height, having to be able to have those oily hips, the back pedal, that's a testament to a certain amount of athleticism to be able to do that. I do think Prysock is legit at that 6'4", 195 pounds listed. He's a name that I feel like I've heard for a while, the last few years, but I know this year he'll ultimately be declaring. I think Prysock for me is one I'm still feeling out, but for now I can know that he's a draftable guy and kind of be in that day 3 conversation. But I'm going to tell you, man, this corner class is stacked, like in terms of just depth. Like I think I'm about 40 corners deep, and I think on average it's 33 to 36 get drafted. So, I mean, that's a testament to even saying somebody's a UDFA in this class or potentially one. It's like that might not compare to other years in the fact that I think there's a lot of depth with the corners here. But, I think the fact, like I said, I mentioned Takario Davis. I mean, Prysock's more of the corner 1 there. I think that speaks to it as well because I think Takario Davis at this point is probably a day 3 guy as well. Somebody down the stretch that definitely could add to it. And I wonder if there'll just be questions about if teams are looking to see if he can add some size. I mean, you can see by the photo in there, he's real slender. But I liked him all right. He's somebody definitely, if I had to pick one person on this list that I am going to go back more on, it would be Prysock.
Okay. Durst, what do you have on Ephesians Prysock from Washington?
Yeah, I like Ephesians Prysock a lot. And I think just because I kind of like the guys that have like obvious strengths and weaknesses as opposed to guys that are just sort of like, yeah, blah, middle of the road, just a guy. So, as we alluded to, he is 6'4", 195, which puts him into the 99th percentile when it comes to, height and length of the position. He uses his arm length to his advantage. He is adept at press coverage. Rep after rep, you see him disrupts routes with a quick jab before pulling back into a more of a mirror match. He also weaponizes his arm length to keep the receivers at a distance when they try to block him in the running game. But there's some concerns with that. Being kind of a high-cut, leggy corner, he struggles to come to balance when tackling. When he tries to fight through traffic on underneath routes, it's not always so smooth. It's very difficult for him to change directions. The click and close is not awesome when receivers make a sudden stop. He is pretty much a zero when it comes to blitz packages. I really haven't seen anything like that, and I've seen quite a bit of his film. He does not really create a lot of turnovers. He's got like 2 interceptions in his entire career, and one of them come on a trick play where it was they kind of flipped it back to a running back who threw the ball. And so to me, he's a true bounty corner with very little versatility when it comes to like slot usage or safety usage. And he may struggle in some zone heavy schemes. So I wrote down in the end, Prysock's rare size makes him an intriguing prospect, but also is the root of most of his physical limitations. I believe there's going to be a wide variety of opinions about his tape. But he's also a guy that could rise during the draft process. So some guys he kind of remind me of Othello Witherspoon, Corey Trice, some guys that were like later second round or later day 2 and day 3 guys. So that's all I got for Prysock. And Peter, what do you think about him?
I agree with a lot of that, to be fair. I think that he's improving every year, which I like. Every single year he seems to be stepping up, kind of adding more to his game. I agree. I think that he's very, I use the word slender. I thought he looks a bit lanky, and he's more lanky than shifty. He doesn't have the best change of direction. It's not bad for his size, but I think his strengths are that he's got good timing with his use of his hands and his physical and his press at the line of scrimmage. I think that he uses his arm length well at the catch point as well. I think his issues, sometimes his size can be a bit of a hindrance in the run game. Blockers can get a bit of leverage and he can struggle to disengage if his hands miss in that initial push. Similarly with his tackling, he can struggle a little bit to get low enough, wrap the arms and have the kind of textbook tackle technique. I think that he's a guy who teams will want to take a chance on, given the physical traits that are there. I agree that putting on some extra weight could potentially help him. I think that he's moving himself up the draft board for a lot of people because it does force so many incompletions just with timing the jump at the catch point, and he's really stepping up this year. And it forms quite a daunting partnership with Takario Davis, I would say. So for me, I think that he's a guy who, if he keeps improving throughout the season as well, teams will be tempted to take a bit of an early flyer on day 3.
Nice. So the next player, Judge Collier from South Carolina. Durst, do you want to kick this one off?
Sure. So he did get hurt very early in the Virginia Tech game, which is South Carolina's home opener. I think it was like early in the first quarter. So he ended up missing the majority of the season up until the last 2 games. Now he's played over 50 snaps a game against the Oklahoma and LSU, and he's looked pretty decent. So he kind of rotates with 2 other guys when it comes to South Carolina's corners, and I actually think that I would ended up putting. The nickel there that plays a little bit of safety and a little bit of nickel. I just blacked out on his name, but
Kilgore.
Kilgore. I would put Kilgore at safety, and I would put Sissy at the slot, the guy that was the NC State transfer, and then I would let this guy play like full time, boundary corner. So again, he's. Let me see if I'm having trouble finding my correct section there on Kilgore. Okay, there he is. So he's kind of my style. I kind of like his size and his length. He's got enough speed to play press man versus these deep receivers. He displays good ball tracking and arm length to swat the ball away. There was one really good swat the ball away on a deep pass versus Ole Miss. Collier appears to prefer surrendering an outside release followed by a trail position, knowing that he has the size and length to make a pass over top of him and along the sidelines. Very difficult for most, college cornerbacks. But my concerns are he frequently misses the jam in pressing. He has to scramble to play catch up when ends up missing. His speed and acceleration appears somewhat capped, good enough but not great. And to me, he just doesn't stay close enough to his man at this point. So he essentially allows NFL open. So in college, these guys may feel like they're kind of or kind of closed down, but in terms of NFL open, he I think he kind of allows out on a snap to snap basis. So he does have another year. He's a junior, so I do have him with a return to school grade. Possibility of being a late day 3 guy if he has a really good end of the season.
Peter, what did you have on Judge Collier?
So I thought that he had a mostly pretty solid year as a starter in 2024, and he's had a little bit of injury bad luck so far this season. There's no issue for me in terms of the long speed. He's got the length for the most part as well. He's at his best when he's tracking the ball deep. I think he can manage to. Again, I don't think he's electric, but he's got some recovery speed and manages to time it nicely to interfere at the catch point for the most part. He's not got the best change of direction, I think. I think his reaction time to double moves, and in particular crossing routes across the middle of the field, it always seems to be a yard or two behind where you'd want him to be, where you see the really elite college corners kind of closing a bit more. I think that in the run game, he's willing, but his tackle technique is really inconsistent. I thought that came across quite a lot in the game against Oklahoma. It's if he gets it right, he can lay the big hit and kind of maybe a little bit of a highlight play, kind of whether it's blowing up a screen, whether it's coming downhill, taking out a running back. But I think the consistency is just not there in terms of his tackle technique. His angles towards the ball carrier can be a little bit iffy at times. Not too much experience up against the best wide receivers, I think. I think the LSU game, he had a decent match this year, but again, he was shown up once or twice. I think just the lack of full-on starting experience for a full season, and just a lack of reps, I suppose, means that I would also suggest that he goes back for another year and tries to really kick on and make a name for himself, rise up the draft board slightly.
And Clint, what did you have on Judge Collier from South Carolina?
Yeah, for starters, I had him as somebody that needs to go back to school, as has already been said. And I think even more so, we talked about some of him coming back from injury. It's just so he's in better game shape. I think I saw the straight line speed being plenty fine for somebody with that much proportionally built size that he has. But I really thought it was already hit on very well as far as leans on the recovery a lot with his size and adequate speed. Likes to do that trail technique a lot. The question for me is, does that transition to the league? Because it's kind of like Peter just said. In my opinion, he's the third best defensive back in that South Carolina secondary at best, behind Cease and Kilgore. So he's not really getting the guy as much. And for us to be sitting here saying that he's got adequate speed, he likes to, rely on his recovery and kind of trail. It's like, I thought that projection was a little more difficult for him. I thought, if I were to imagine myself in an NFL evaluator watching the tape of him this year, it would be one where next year I wanted to see him get more of the reps against the big boy from the opposing team. And I think like I already said, kind of seeing him in that better game shape. Because, I mean, he is very well proportionally built. And I thought he had multiple plays I watched where there was some blanketing there as far as some good natural coverage skills. But, not to take it over to Lenore Sellers, but that's like so many of us talking about how his tape is impossible to get a gauge on this year because their offensive line is just so pathetically horrid. He's somebody else that I think is a little bit tougher gauge. I'd like to see go back next year and just get some added tape, added reps, and kind of more define what he's going to be.
Okay. So the next player is Dante Balfour from Texas Tech. Peter, do you want to kick this one off?
Yeah. So Dante Balfour, I think he's quite an interesting one. 21 and 22 is at North Carolina. Kind of had limited opportunities there. And then he really kicked on by moving to Charlotte, 23-24, and was a starter there. Had some big plays and big moments against Memphis and Tulsa in 2023. And in 2024, he was excellent, kind of continued, picked up where he left off over the course of the 2 seasons there. 22 pass breakups, which is, and it showed that he could, track receivers a variety of routes, no real issues there. Just the main thing coming away from that is the level of competition. I think there's question marks about that. And he was a really mature leader, captained the team regularly in 2024. And I think he's come into a sort of rotation at Texas Tech. He's not necessarily in for every series, but I think he's impressed for the most part when he's been in the game. I would like to see him continue to build on that. As I say, I think it's a slight step up in terms of the expectations at the program. Certainly, he had a nice game against Utah this year. Very willing in the run game. He's not a wow athlete or massively physical, but I think that as Clint was saying for Collier, I think that there are definitely examples there of him properly blanketing wide receivers. He closes quickly at the catch point, has good hand use. There are potentially limitations in terms of the long speed and in terms of that physicality, I think. So for me, I have him as a potentially a kind of high value undrafted free agent at this point. If he can step up and become kind of the guy in that Texas Tech cornerback room, then that can change. But at the moment, I think he's a guy who is a good college footballer, and I don't necessarily see the ceiling lifting too much to the point where he can be a massive NFL contributor.
Clint, how about you on Dante Balfour from Texas Tech?
Yeah, I thought that was really well laid out by Peter as far as I feel similarly that realistically, I think this guy's more of gunning to be a well-signed UDFA, gunning to be somebody that gets on a practice squad or something of the like. That was a hellacious jump going from Charlotte to Texas Tech, because this isn't your mom and dad's Texas Tech either. They spent like crazy all over the field. I mean, I know they get most of the pub as far as the pass rushers, but they've spent everywhere. And, so that one, as far as that school, that doesn't bother me quite as much as saying that he's rotational versus the guy. I think he's got something around like 4 or 5 long speed, which for somebody, in that 185 range, would like that to be a little bit better. But I think that also kind of goes back to, like Peter said, as far as I don't know that the ceiling goes a lot higher than it is. Like, he's not somebody, like I've said with others, where I'm sitting here like, he needs to have a real strong finish here, real strong down the stretch. I think this is a little bit more of like somebody being what they are. But I mean, I think there's even better context in the fact that he was a high-rated recruit. I mean, he was a 4-star when he signed with North Carolina out of high school before transferring to Charlotte after that freshman year. So there is some background. He's, for all we know, some team will like the fact that he's played at those 3 programs and he's gone from ACC down to playing at that Charlotte level and then back up to this really high-spending Texas Tech team. He's shown versatility in the fact of adjusting to new rooms. But like I said, if he was in my group or whatever, I'd be saying to him, gun to sign with the best UDFA option you can. And as far as the people that we had for this episode, I had him at the bottom.
Okay. Durs, what do you have on Dante Balfour from Texas Tech?
Yeah, I think we're pretty much in agreement on him. I do have him as a undrafted free agent with only an asterisk of maybe he would be a late day three if I did go back and watch his Charlotte film, which I didn't. So I did rely solely on his senior season Texas Tech film, and I realized that he's got really good grades. He's got 3 straight years of over 74 PFF grades. So this year, as well as his 2 Charlotte grades. So I may actually go back and watch his Charlotte film at some point and just see if I'm kind of missing something. But yeah, basically primarily a boundary corner with good size and arm length, but didn't stand out on film. He starts, but he has not clearly separated himself from number 14 and number 27, the other 2 corners there. I didn't look up their names. Mainly a zone or off man. Route disruption, click and close, and recovery speed all appear to be below NFL average. He seems like the receiver he's covering is constantly open, but just isn't really targeted. So I think his grades might be a little bit misleading. There was a potential duel against Jordan Tyson that I was really excited about seeing, but it kind of never really materialized. Balfour played probably like 19 snaps during that game, appeared not to be hurt, just appeared to rotate in and out. So yeah, I'm just not real excited about this guy.
Okay. Well, and it was the PFF grades that added him to the show because I had 5 on the list, needed 3 more. So I grabbed the 3 highest PFF grades, and that was of players that were in the draft class. So that was how he got added to the show. Now we're back. Jyaire Hill from Michigan. Clint, what did you see out of Hill?
I saw an outside zone corner that, frankly, I enjoyed the tape on Hill, and as I did similarly with a lot of that Michigan secondary. I had on here the kid's got sub 4.4 speed, elite combination of size and speed, creates difficult matchup for opposing coordinators who can struggle finding receivers with similar dimensions. He's a 6'2", 190 guy that does have hips to him and natural ball skills. Saw good hand-eye coordination, athleticism from him. He's somebody that I feel like consensus-wise is viewed more as this like late day 3. He's somebody on the inverse of what I said with the last guy. Would really like to see have a strong stretch down here. I mean, he's going to get opportunities to be in prime time. Obviously, Ohio State, for example, is an easy one to point at, going against top-level talent. But I think this is somebody that's definitely going to, just have to lean on having sub 4.4 speed. And, I said he's an outside zone corner, but I saw some good press ability from him as well. I mean, he's got great size at 6'2", 190. He looks more slender than that, honestly. Frankly, I wonder if there's room to grow. But I enjoyed Hill a lot. I'm probably a hair higher than consensus on him. He's somebody that if you told me was getting looked at early day 3, I wouldn't think you were stoned.
Durs, what do you have on Jyaire Hill from Michigan?
Well, Clint may think I'm stoned because I'm going to raise the bar a little bit. So I'm pretty excited about Jyaire here. I think he's the fastest of the group that we studied. I do agree with Clint. I think he's got a really good chance of being sub 4.4. So we're talking about like a traits kind of guy, a length and speed. I think better change of direction than most corners with his height and length. He can play off man's, soft press, and zone. Primarily used on the boundary, but he's been increasingly getting more and more reps in the slot as they kind of flip-flopped a couple of guys. There's the slot guy, number 10, that we're going to talk about here in a couple of weeks or whatever. They kind of flip-flopped him a little bit. So I think he's very physical. He's kind of, one of his highlights of his career was this huge forced fumble against USC. But I think he violently slams into blocks sometimes. So I think he's a pretty, physically imposing player with some physicality to him. I have some concerns. I think he needs to do a better job converting pass breakups into interceptions interceptions. The Oklahoma game, the Nebraska game, and the Washington game were all plays or all times where he had essentially a dropped interception. Most of the losses to me are correctable, but I think he's susceptible to double moves. And I specifically wrote down Isaiah Bond last year and Denzel Boston, which I can't remember if that was this year or last year because I think I watched both of those games. But so he's susceptible to some double moves, and many of his losses are also when he seems to be kind of out leveraged, where I think he's maybe playing a little bit too much shade inside or too much leverage outside, so he's kind of getting beat that way. I think there was one play where he got fooled into thinking the wide receiver was blocking him on a screen, and so he ended up surrendering a quick slant to Jacoby Lane in the end zone for a touchdown. So in the end, Hill is a young but experienced, scheme-diverse corner with a very full toolbox. His physical traits are first-round quality, but he's faced a long list of current and future NFL receivers. We're talking about Denzel Boston. We're talking about Ryan Williams. We're talking about Jeremy Bernard. We're talking about Matthew Golden. We're talking about Isaiah Bond. We're talking about Jacoby Lane. We're talking about Elijah Surratt. We're talking about Pat Bryant and the Ohio State receivers. So it is an amazing group of receivers, and so he's got some losses on tape, but I think his resume of receivers he's went with is like extremely impressive. So combine that with the coaching he's received from Wink Martindale, which I know not everybody loves, but I think he's really a very high-end prospect. So I have him as actually a round 2 guy, which is why I was saying that Clint may think I'm stoned. But Peter, what do you think about him?
So I'm a little bit lower than that on him. I think, to be fair, I didn't necessarily take it into account as much the strength of wide receiver that he's played against. As you say, a lot of the losses which had concerned me were against elite talent in college football, whether it was at the moment or in the last year or so. I think that he's someone who his aggression, his mentality, his physicality are his biggest strengths. As you say, the play against USC obviously got a lot of traction online, but it's you can see in his tackling the rest of the time. You can see at the catch point sometimes when I think that he's been beaten, he can manage to close and make that powerful impact to dislodge the ball and turn it into a positive play. I think that I don't love the ball skills. I think that his hands have let him down, as you mentioned, Durst, on a couple of occasions, and these are the sort of things that again do affect your draft stock. In the NFL, you need to be able to take the open goals when they're handed to you. On his good days, it seems like he's absolutely everywhere. Makes physical hits, really good at the catch point. I think sometimes he can struggle to mirror when he's in man coverage. And also can sometimes get beat downfield. I thought Denzel Boston had a couple of plays which didn't look great for Hill. And also I saw that he was benched late last year due to discipline issues, which if he's sorted that out, it seemed to be a short-term thing. So fingers crossed he has, and it won't affect his draft stock at all. But I know that is something that teams sometimes look at. So. Yeah, I think that at times the stat sheet hasn't shown the times that he's been beaten, whether it was kind of at the line of scrimmage or 5 yards downfield, because he's got that closing speed to recover and maybe make a big hit, contest the ball at the catch point when initially he lost at the snap. But yeah, I think for me, I've got late day 3 at the moment. I think I would like to see. I think his aggressive mentality can sometimes lead him to be over-aggressive. Good straight line speeds, kind of meaning that he doesn't necessarily have the change of direction that you'd like. But again, I think there's definitely a path. He's got all the physical attributes. He's got the mentality on the pitch. He plays nasty, which I think is an underrated quality at times in a defensive back. But yeah, I think that I definitely see the traits which would kind of put him in the day 2 conversation for me. I'm not quite there yet personally though.
So this will be, I guess, something to watch because Durst, I'll buy the degree of difficulty, right? I realize this isn't a gymnastics routine or a figure skating routine or anything like that, but The fact that he has to go through the Big Ten gauntlet of wide receivers is a great point. And as we get through the season and he has to play Ohio State again, I am hoping that we can do a cornerback big board show where we summarize all the different corners that we evaluated, but the qualification is it has to be after Ohio State plays Michigan. So we can talk about Hill and where he is on everybody's board after that, because I'll buy the degree of difficulty in the Big Ten, maybe not round 2, but definitely day 2.
We'll have 4 quarterbacks to talk about after Michigan and Ohio State play. We can just do a whole show on them.
You're right, and we do have another Ohio State corner coming up next. So, Durst, do you want to kick off Elliott Washington from Penn State?
All right, so Elliott Washington's another guy that seemed to kind of rotate in and out a little bit. So, I'm not too sure what to make about him. He was a 4-star high school recruit as a safety. So he seems a little bit more of a thicker, muscular build. I think he's got good reactionary quickness. And I saw, that he was supposedly timed at 4.32, which actually would make him the fastest if that holds true from the guys I researched. I'm not so sure that's the time I'm seeing in terms of play speed, though. But he was apparently timed at 4.32 in his freshman year at Penn State. He likes to do a quick jam, kind of followed by a turn and run is kind of the way I describe his play style. But despite the loss of Cam Miller to Rutgers, Elliott has been a rotational player playing behind A.J. Harris. I'm not too sure if I got this name right, but Davian Collins, and then the nickelback Zion Tracy. So he had only 2 career starts coming into the 2025 season and seems to be like less of a starter this year as well. So I definitely have him as a return to school guy as well. I think when AJ Harris leaves, maybe he ends up, going up the pecking order. But what do you guys have on Washington?
Yeah, Peter, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I agree. I didn't, there wasn't much tape to work from before this year in terms of regular starts and getting a decent amount of snaps. It sounds like he had an absolutely excellent kind of off-season, then spring and summer, forced his way into the coach's plans. I can't remember the name of the award off the top of my head, but he was the first player in the program's history to win to win an award for cornerbacks 6 times in a row. I think it was a competitive player award. 6 out of 6 times he won them all, and again, just apparently sounds like an excellent guy to coach, excellent guy to play beside, and again, I think that's something that teams take a look at if you're coachable, if you're a good teammate, and if you put the work in, and I think he does those things. He's also, the speed and strength combination is kind of, it's absolutely insane. I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but he put up silly numbers for a defensive back in the bench press, and of course has the excellent straight line speeds that Dush was talking about. I agree, it doesn't necessarily show up on tape sometimes. I think it seems like he's a little hesitant just as he grows into his role, into getting some more snaps, and also with the season that Penn State have had so far, I think that's maybe factoring in. And I do think that there's a lot of hesitation there that's maybe kind of affecting his play slightly. I think he forces incompletions pretty well, and definitely helped by that long speed. He can be physical at the catch point, and is always looking to make plays in the ball. I would just like to see more reps. So for me, I think he's definitely someone who should be looking to go back to school, get another year as a proper full-time starter rather than the rotation that he's still in at the moment. I like his agility. I like his hands at the line of scrimmage for the most part. He's not great in the run game. I don't love his physicality in the tackle compared to when the ball is in the air. I'd like to see him kind of make more of an effort to get lower, wrap the arms. And there was one recently who had a really bad whiff that led to a touchdown. And again, that's the sort of play that you just can't have at the NFL level. So yeah, for me, I think he's a guy who, with the tools that he's got, another year as a proper full-time starter would probably do him the world of good, and we could be having a very different conversation about him this time next year.
And Clint, what do you have on Elliott Washington from Penn State?
I mean, for starters, look at the photo of him on the screen. I could tell you that was a running back or a linebacker, and you'd believe me. For as much as we talk about like a prototype size, his build really is a little unconventional just on tape, and the fact that I didn't believe he was 5'11". I also definitely didn't believe the 4.32 time that had been reported. I thought I saw more of a 4.4, 4.45 guy. So I think even more reps not being rotational just for those two things will bring a little more clarity as far as the tape. I like how it was alluded to with A.J. Harris. I mean, we're talking about a guy that's consensus-wise probably, a top 5 corner in this class. So he is going to be getting all the dudes from the other teams. And I had Washington next to last as far as this group today is in front of Balfour. Did I get that correct? Yeah. Sorry, brain moment. He's definitely a go back to school guy for me. I did like how it was alluded to. I thought he was tougher playing in recovery and playing press as far as playing corner and covering than he was tackling in the run game. I think that's something that could definitely be circled as far as evaluators giving him a grade before he declares or not. But I really didn't see a guy that in this corner class, like I talked about earlier, where there's 33 to 36 drafted each year, and I think the depth is very heavy in this class. I don't see him cracking into being drafted, and for that reason, why wouldn't you go back and make some more NIL and get a big piece of getting to get some more tape against the higher competition with A.J. Harris's absence into being a top 50 pick?
Okay. So the next player is Dalen Everett from Georgia. Now, I'm also going back to check. Was he on the original list?
He was not.
He was
I got some
not.
notes on him, but he wasn't on the list.
No. That's all right. We'll skip him because I also noticed. Why don't we do JQ Hardaway now? So I will find the slide for JQ Hardaway because there is one that exists. And Durst, do you want to kick off JQ Hardaway?
Sure. So Jonquist is his full name. He's 6'3", 193 pounds. He is a Cincinnati transfer. He played there in 2022, where he was a starter. So he's got really good size and length. I think he's got a pretty good tackling net with this whole length thing. He's not a powerful tackler, but he's got a kind of a range of, he throws that net out there and can grab a few things. So he's pretty good in press, but rarely gets the chance. They play a lot of like off man type of stuff there. So he's a guy that I studied over the summer. And one of the notes I made, and I wish I'd taken like better notes on this, was he had some pretty good reps against Trey Harris and Matthew Golden. So he consistently made the tackle on short passes against Trey Harris. And he had a speed enough to at least stay close to Nick Harbor in 2025 and Isaiah Bond in 2024 on some deeper routes. But so I don't think his hip turn is the best. His recovery speed seems to come from being kind of a long strider. When he loses a step, that's when he struggles to get his head around to find the ball. So I saw reps against Isaiah Bond, which we just mentioned, Nick Harbor, which I just mentioned, but also Dylan Bell, Ryan Wingo. Like all four of them got him on basically long routes where he just did not look back to find the ball. So he seems to be more of a zone or off-man corner who typically lines up about 10 yards deep. Appears to be more comfortable when things are in front of him than when he's got the back to the ball. And other than the Trey Harris, I thought he was kind of like a high tackler. So what's a high tackler? Some people are ankle biters and they go maybe a little bit low. I think he kind of comes up a little too high. He's just kind of like a high hugger in a sense, like tries to get people around the shoulder pads. And so I didn't really like his tackling other than the Trey Harris game. So that's I got also a comp of Eli Rick. So he was a guy that I'm pretty sure was undrafted, but was able to stick around the league. For Hardaway, I think he's probably more of like a round 4, round 5 guy that hopefully will stick around the league for a while.
Peter, what do you have in JQ Hardaway?
I think that there was definitely one phrase in there for Durst in particular that I wanted to pick up on, that Watching the Ole Miss game as well against Trey Harris, I think he excels when the game is in front of him, as you mentioned. I think when he's able to kind of come up and make his tackles, that's when his tackling is fine. I think that there are other times that it's a bit of an issue. So far this season, it's actually been pretty good for the most part. He's only one missed tackle, but again, he's letting guys get an extra yard or two because of poor technique, which doesn't necessarily show up in the stats, but it's again, it's something that I think teams will take notice of. He's got a bit of a mixed bag against the elite wide receivers, as was mentioned there. I liked that Ole Miss game against Trey Harris, and the Matthew Golden game I think was a bit up and down as well. I think his lateral movement's not necessarily great. So kind of when he's changing direction side to side, trying to mirror receivers, he's not as great there. He can close really nicely. He can manage to recover pretty nicely for the most part. I think he can be quite physical at the line of scrimmage. Sometimes I want to see more of that. I think he can be a little bit soft in terms of his line-up and coverage sometimes. He uses his arm length pretty well when targeted deep. I would like to see him turn his head a little more early to try and kind of increase the amount of times he's able to make a play on the ball. It's never been an issue in his career so far, but I believe PFF have credited him with 4 penalties in the last 3 games, so that's a wee bit of a concern, something that's probably worth monitoring. I think he is improving year on year for the most part. I think one thing for him is that his testing could really affect his draft position. Depending on what numbers come out of the combine potentially, that could make a big difference, whether it's early day 3, late day 3. I think that if he can be consistent through the year and with good testing, he'll be in that kind of round 4, round 5 territory. If not, then that's where, again, I think it'll end up being slightly crowded in that day 3 area in the cornerback room. So it will just come down to whether his end of the season and numbers that he puts up are better or worse than those he's up against.
And Clint, what did you have on J.Q. Hardaway from Kentucky?
Yeah, I can go pretty quick here. I think right now I'd have him pegged kind of in that round 6, maybe round 5 range in what is a very deep class. I think there might be some kind of niche to him, and the fact that you look at his numbers here, 6'3", 193, and his length, you imagine him being this great press corner. But really, to what the 2 other guys already said, better when the play's in front of him, better in some zone coverage. He's somebody with his build and kind of the fact he likes it in front of him. You almost wonder if he could play some safety, but I don't think he's that strong of a tackler to be one of those guys we talk about that kind of can lean on that versus more like we said earlier in the episode, a Jalen Kilgore, and we'll continue to talk about like Malik Muhammed being somebody that's really positionally versatile. I liked Hardaway okay. I think there's some stuff to work with, but having, been the guy that said this 3 or 4 times as far as this being such a deep depth corner class, I wonder if there's some ability for him to kind of get ate up and dropping on a board for a lot of the reasons we've already said in terms of what is the standout thing. Because if you've listened to the 3 of us, it's been a whole lot of, oh, it's good. Oh, it's lacking a little bit. I just kind of wonder what his selling point or his calling card is as somebody that's kind of battling that day 3 group. So he's someone that I would qualify as he needs to have a strong stretch right here, particularly for kind of a frustrated Kentucky program that feels a little lost with Mark Stoops right now. And there's going to be great competition for him. And I did like how it was pointed out. He's somebody that I'd be fascinated to see how he hangs in Indianapolis when he goes to the combine as far as some testing numbers. Because lastly, like I said, in such a crowded depth room for a guy such as himself that I don't ever see being a starter in the NFL, has to get his foot in the door rotationally. So if I had to pick up the guys on this list that down the stretch I'm the most fascinated to keep up with, because I think my opinion could change or either be really stapled, it'd be Hardaway.
Got it. So the next player we'll cover is Davison Igbinosun. So, Clint, would you kick off Davison Igbinosun?
Well, I think for starters, it's kind of consensusly gotten cool to hate on Igbinosun a little bit because of the fact that, yes, he is incredibly grabby. I mean, this guy's got flags out the ass, and there's no escaping that. But some team's going to look at him for the raw tools and get excited. I mean, kind of earlier we talked about, I didn't see that 4.3 speed on that guy. There's 4.3 speed on this guy. This is a guy that's going to go into Indianapolis and run a 4.35 or better. Really great outside zone corner. I mean, look at him. Look at the proportional build on him at that 6'2", 195. Comes from total blue blood program, top program in the country right now. He's got experience. He's also played with a lot of great, other guys in that secondary, like Jermaine Matthews Jr. We'll talk about another day. I like Igbinosun as somebody that you circle and you look around at the other scouts in your room and say, who wants to raise their hand and claim this guy? Because for a defensive back coach in the league, somebody's going to have ego and say, I can fix that grabbiness. I can get him to more rely on just his physical tools. And I mean, look, anybody can work with a 6'2", 195-pound corner that can run sub 4.35 and has experience playing at Ohio State. For me, as far as the guys we had on this episode, I had him in that 2-3 range. And someone that down the stretch, because I mean, look, unlike a lot of these other guys, he's going to be in the college football playoff. He's going to be playing against the Michigans. He's going to be playing against the Georgias. He's going to be playing against the, et cetera, top programs. He's got a great opportunity to go put some good lasting tape on there for a file that's already this thick in NFL circles because he's got the reps out there. But lastly, I would say, and this is kind of like saying, if I had putted well today, I would have shot better on the golf course. Like, yeah, no shit. But if you took the grabbiness and the penalties and the glaringness of that, this is a round 2 guy that we could even be talking about being a late round 1. So I mean, somebody's going to bet here. He's not going to go late round 1. I don't think he's going to go early round 2. But he's somebody right now that's battling hard. It's like you want to take that sub 4.35 and that proportionally built 6'2", 195 pounds into day 2. Let's see it, man.
Yep. So Peter, what do you have on Davison Igbinosun from Ohio State?
Yeah, to be honest, much of the same stuff. I think that that speed is obviously his selling point, and also the mentality is, physical to the point of aggression, and of course it was someone that I was interested in last year, and I think 16 penalties last season, that's obviously going to raise many red flags, and it's interesting. At first I thought, he's maybe cleaned up his penalty issues pretty well so far this season, and then you watch the tape and you're like, I wonder where the balance is between him cleaning up his technique and the officials not calling him quite as often so far this year. So I'm not convinced that it's necessarily improved as much as I'd initially hoped. However, I think this extra year in Ohio State's defense is massively helping his stock. Such a great athlete, tracks the deep ball well. I think, interestingly, a lot of his penalties that he's given up, it's not times when he's been beaten badly by the receiver like you sometimes see. I think it's more when he's in pretty good coverage and he just doesn't seem to trust himself to get his head round to look for the ball while maintaining that awareness of where his receiver is. I think it seems to be kind of just, as he wants to turn the head, he wants to get those hands up and wants to engage, which is just, it's killing him in terms of his draft stock, because he's been, he's shown that he can go stride for stride with pretty much any receiver. I also think that the lack of big plays, lack of interceptions, two picks over the course of his career is surprising for someone who, again, can manage to track downfield as well as him, can manage to burst the ball as well as he does. Lastly, I would just mention as well as kind of the vast experience that he's got. 10 starts at Ole Miss, and then has played pretty much every game for Ohio State since he transferred, and for the most part has been a massive plus point for them. I think his tackling technique can be a little bit up and down, but just when you've got that physicality, that aggression, he goes, he's a heat-seeking missile to go find the ball carrier, and I think that's a massive plus for him as well, in addition to again, that athletic ability to track runners downfield. I think that he's most likely to be a kind of late day 2 player. I don't see any scenario at this point, unless the penalties really pick up again, where he makes it into day 3 of the NFL draft.
Durst, where are you in igbinosun?
Well, I'll start off with he was my cornerback 5 coming out of summer scouting in 2024. So I've been kind of high on this guy for a while, and then this last year I cooled down a little bit because he had kind of a rough season, but he still like was a top 10 corner for me coming into this season. So his strengths are his speed, his length, his athleticism to excel in man coverage. He thrives in press man. He uses his long arms to disrupt releases. He's physical and drives his receivers out of bounds during their routes. He'll scrap, he'll claw until past the whistle, and he has only 1 missed tackle on the season, 3.7% missed tackle rate, which is outstanding for a guy that's, I think, perceived as being like a cover corner. I put one clip out where it was 4 plays in a row in the Texas game where he was in on the tackle, and there was I think it was 7 tackles or 7, counting assisted tackles, but 7 times he was in on a tackle on 1 drive in the Texas game. It was pretty amazing. But his play style could lead to penalty issues, which is master of the obvious there. Half the shit he does is illegal in the NFL. Even with the more lax college rules, he led the nation in pass interference in 2024. He's got a little bit of a wiry frame, and as Peter was saying, I think there's only 2 interceptions, which you kind of feel like there should be more because he's got 2,400 snaps under his belt. So with that kind of, you think he should be a little bit more, ball production there. And I question, is he just, I think he's fast. Clint says he's fast. I agree. I think he's fast. But why is he grabbing so much? Does he not trust his speed? What's going on there? Now, I still think there's a pretty solid chance that he could be a round 2 guy. I'm going to throw 2 names out there that I'd like to get Clint's impression on. Isaiah Oliver and Jalen Collins were both 2nd-round picks by the Falcons. And how do you think that he would compare to these guys?
It's a nice mention. You saw me start smirking when you said Isaiah Oliver. Isaiah Oliver was kind of a cult prospect for us down here, CULT, as far as who favored him or didn't in this Falcons fan base. But, I think that is kind of a fun mention. I'm going to look into that even more, just for some of the deficiencies you see in him, because the athleticism's there. I mean, you pull up Isaiah Oliver's relative athletic score. I mean, he's big time. And the same thing you're going to see with igbinosun. And I mean, hell, I'm sitting here thinking about it. Oliver's hung around the league. It feels like pretty good while. I mean, he's got multiple years, particularly over average. But that's a fun mention right there. I like that. I don't have as much of a comment on Alfred Collins. Isaiah Oliver was the one that kind of made my ears perk up. You saw me start grinning, knowing that was coming my way as the Falcons.
Cool. So we've gone all the way through on igbinosun, right? Because we started with Clint, we ended with Durst, right?
Yeah.
So the last player we have is Malik Muhammed from Texas. Peter, you want to kick this one off?
Yeah, for me, I had Muhammad as my highest rated of these players that we covered tonight. I think he's shown he's had an excellent start to this season. He's given up 75 yards on 18 targets so far across the entire season. A lot of the guys that we've discussed over the past couple of weeks have given that up in a match at some point this season. He's only got 2 career games with over 50 yards allowed in terms of, again, that's according to PFF. I think that his only issue potentially is against kind of the bigger, more physical wide receivers. The Ohio State game showed a possible ceiling for him. He did many things well in that match, but there's occasions where there's a bit of a physical mismatch with Jeremiah Smith, which of course he's not alone in. That's many defensive backs across college football so far, and Cornell Tate as well. I think that he's not necessarily the best athlete out of the people that we're talking about, but he's just a great football player all around. For the most part, makes his tackles, disrupts passes, he reads quarterbacks, and just reads the play very, very well. He's very savvy in zone, really consistent, as shown by the stats that I mentioned there. I think that potentially is the sort of guy who, as he comes up to the NFL, potentially you don't want him matched up against the Justin Jeffersons, Jamar Chase, even the kind of bigger receivers like DK Metcalf, your George Pickens. However, if
Drake
you
London.
Exactly, Drake London, exactly. And is one, however, if you've got an athletic corner on the other side, he can lock down the other side of the field and be a really elite NFL wide receiver too. I think that it's not much of a leap from where he is just now to reach that stage. So for me, I've got him as I think definitely second round guy at the moment, and another guy who I'm really excited to see what the rest of the season holds for him.
Durs, where are you and Malik Muhammed right now?
So he's my number 2 of this list behind igbinosun, who I just can't quite quit just yet. But so Muhammad, I mean, he flashed as a freshman. He got I think started 2 games as a true freshman, and I feel like one of them may have been like the Washington again, in the playoffs. I mean, he's a guy that I penciled in a long time ago. So he started all 16 games in 2024. So good size, good length, good speed, reactionary athleticism, scheme diverse, more of a soft press and zone corner, but he's got the ability to come get up in your face and do some press. He's competitive in every facet of the game, a physical player who will support the run. I think he's got good route processing and recognition, and you see a couple of like diving pass breakups as well. Now both sides got overly physical in the Ohio State game, so I got a clip of Jeremiah Smith kind of pushing him off to the side, a play that probably could have been offensive pass interference, and I got 2 clips of Muhammad basically holding him, trying to get him out of his release. But something that Peter mentioned, I forget how you phrased it, but something about, I'm not so sure he's a great athlete, and that's kind of what I would say. I just don't see round 1 traits. I don't see round 1 recovery speed. So my comp for him is Kyle Fuller. Now you could probably substitute Kendall Fuller or any of the Fullers, from Virginia Tech. But
You son of a bitch! I was excited to talk about my Kendall Fuller comp.
Yeah. Well, let's hear it, because I'm done with him. So go ahead, Glenn. Go ahead and talk about the Fuller guys.
Yeah, wow. I was excited to say my Kendall Fuller comp. Muhammad was my number 1 on this list, followed up by igbinosun. So just kind of the flip of what Durs just said. Something I really liked, outside of the obvious, the positional versatility. He's got boundary snaps, nickel. You even see certain packages they have him dropping back as a safety. You're not going to bait Muhammad. Incredible eye discipline. And I think, as the 2 of them said, for him to be a good athlete, not a great athlete, there's some boost to that in the fact that you're not going to get him thrown off. I said that he closes underneath well, got a good plant and drive. And I like how, I can't remember which of the 2 of you it was that said, but I wanted to make a point as well to say, this isn't the guy to pair up with a corner 1 that's kind of a smaller corner 1. I'd like to see him in a secondary with some size where he finds that role. But as far as the versatility, I thought the Fuller mention, you beat me to it. I think that's dead on. And I think as far as draft capital, he's not going to go round 1. He's a day 2 lock. It's just at this point, it says he get into round 2 or round 3. I'd bet round 2. And what is a crowded class, but I think among a lot of guys, I've said earlier about, this might be kind of a niche player, or some coach is going to have an ego and want to do something with him. No, this is draft a football player, know what you're getting, a guy you can get a lot of mileage and a lot of reps out of. And this is, I so often say for teams that this is a you can't F this up pick, team that maybe can't F it up. You're not going to F this one up. This is just a good football player, good size, good enough size, good enough speed, good enough all of it. I mean, what was the worst critique we all just said right here right now? That he's a good athlete, not a great athlete. I think he'll be all right, But yeah, no, well put. He was my top of this group.
Okay, so a couple questions. Clint, Malik Muhammad, boundary or slot corner, or he could do either?
I think he could do either. I think he kind of lean on that Fuller comp we mentioned as far as projecting his split there. It's a lot of it's going to come down to what team takes him, what need is there, what coach has this preference for him or not. I don't feel passionate about one versus the other. I think that's part of kind of his profile and kind of his selling point. What did I say earlier about Hardaway, about having that selling point, having that calling card of yours? I think that versatility and just the discipline and just football player is kind of, that's what's going to be in his file for teams and what's going to get him taken day two.
Durst, how about you? Slot, boundary, doesn't matter.
I do think he could play both, but I would say this: if we were rating these guys solely on the ability to play the slot, he would definitely be my number one. It'd be like not even close. So igbinosun's a little bit more of a boom bust guy, but definitely a boundary guy. And this guy I think is probably the most scheme positional versatility of the guys we studied this week.
And Peter, how about you? Boundary, slot, doesn't matter.
So I think definitely we've been quite boundary heavy for the most part today, but I would probably prefer to keep on the boundary for the most part. Obviously, you can move him around, as has been mentioned. He is a versatile player, and I think that many of his skills, and particularly his kind of high IQ and mentality in terms of his aggression in the game as well, will translate nicely to the slot. But I think, having him as a boundary guy is where you'd manage to make the most use of him.
Okay. So that finishes up the 8 corners for today. Clint, would you like to introduce yourself? We have a lot of people watching. Introduce yourself. Tell them about all of your draft content.
Yes, I'll be a quick one. My Twitter, as it's listed right there on the screen, is really my hub for everything at this point. A lot of Falcons coverage on there, but there's always a lot of draft stuff throughout the year. I'm actually kind of on a heater with my Twitter the last week or two, funny enough.
You have been busy. I will definitely say I have notifications on for all 3 of you. I can definitely assure you've been busier than the other 2 combined.
Hey. But no, I mean, it's easy to find all my stuff at Twitter. I'm very active there at NFL Draft Dome, and my name as well.
Cool. Peter.
Yeah, so again, you can find much of my content. I'm a Seattle Seahawks writer for a UK-based website called Join the Huddle. So it's Join the Huddle UK on Twitter. I'm at Peter Quinn 1997 on Twitter, and I'm appearing on Wednesday nights with these guys to discuss cornerbacks as well.
Cool. And Durst.
Yeah, similar to Clint, you can pretty much find all my content on Twitter/X at Durst NFL Draft. Of course, you can also catch me on the Mrs. R Relevant podcast. And please, if you haven't already, like and subscribe to the Mrs. R Relevant podcast.
Oh, look at that. Durst helped me out. So welcome to Draft Professor, everybody. The best way to be notified of our daily podcast at 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. Eastern is to either hit subscribe on YouTube or go find NFL Draft Fanatic, no I in Fanatic, on Twitter, and the entire schedule is the pinned tweet. We're here every day. So yesterday we covered wide receivers, and then we followed that up with offensive line, and we had Jyaire Ostrowski on evaluating offensive line. That was a lot of fun. I don't know that I had ever heard somebody talk about offensive line play that much. I was entertained. I had a front row seat. And then today we do corners at 7, and we have a defensive line episode that's coming on at the top of the hour. So in about 55 minutes, Newt Weston returns to Draft Professors. So I've been waiting for that one for about 6 months. Yeah. But anyway, we're here every day, and from now until the end of the year, every podcast is going to be like this. It's just which position is being covered, and I will flash the ad down at the bottom. So while you are reading the ad, the corners we're going to be discussing next week are Dre Norwood from Missouri, Jalen Kilgore from South Carolina, Cam Miller from Rutgers, Xavier Scott from Illinois, Zeke Berry from Michigan, Jalen Guilbeau from Texas, D'Angelo Pons from Indiana, and Chandler Rivers from Duke. So it's going to be a heavy slot corner episode. Not everybody's a slot. but there's, I believe, like 5 slot players in that list of 8. So thank you all for watching. Thank you for stopping by and checking out our podcast. Like I said, we are here every day. Give Clint, Peter, and Durst a follow. We can't put this content out without them showing up once a week and doing their thing. Very appreciative to all 3 of you. We will see you on a podcast again in about 55 minutes, everybody.